everyone. Welcome to TSP Weekly. This is your tech startup podcast for Thursday, August 7th, 2014. Today we are once again recording at the beautiful Communitech Hub. Happy to be back in this space. Lots of action, lots of startups buzzing about and milling about here. So good energy.
Vibrancy.
Yes, exactly.
Very vibrant.
Exactly. My name is Darren Conley. I'm a local tech entrepreneur here in Kitchener-Waterloo. And with me, as always, is my co-host, the one, the only, the fellow tech entrepreneur, Stephen Campbell. How are you, man?
Good. You've been working on that introduction, I can tell. I was on the edge of my seat there, and then it was just me.
Well, you knew your name was coming at some point.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. I got something neat I wanted to talk about real quick, guys, today. I was looking over some engineering concepts that are sort of new and that you really need to know about. And one that struck my eye was flywheel energy storage.
This sounds familiar to me.
Yeah? So, producing energy is always a big concern, getting more expensive all the time. But the flywheel storage or the flywheel concept, large, heavy wheels that store energy by spinning rapidly and release it through a generator, converting it back to electricity, has sort of been in the pipes for a while. And they've now have a large-scale flywheel plant that's set to open. It did open in 2011, actually. It's in Stephentown, New York, and it's got 200 flywheels that are spinning up to 1,600 RPMs each.
That's crazy.
And,
it's like
cranking out a ton of energy.
It's storing electricity in the form of kinetic energy,
right?
Rather than in a chemical battery kind of thing.
Correct, and it's not Niagara Falls where it's sort of hydro energy, or it's not the windmills where it's the wind turbine energy. So it's an interesting, neat energy storage concept.
Sure.
To get them through some of the spikes of the AC and the hot. Although this summer hasn't been hot, but
no, we'll have to get somebody from the flywheel industry on board. With the podcast one day.
It's either that or talking about fracking. We could have also talked about the medical isotope shortage.
Isn't fracking from Battlestar Galactica?
It can be.
Yeah. Well, listen, let's introduce our guest for today. We have joining us today Mr. Anton Kabanov. I hope I spelled that or pronounced that right. Kabanov?
Yeah, it sounds very official, but okay. Just Anton is fine.
Okay. Anton from MBlok. MBlok, we're going to hear a little bit more detail about it later in the podcast, but essentially creating a portable data storage solution. Mobile data storage solution, right?
Correct.
Excellent. How are you today, Anton? Doing good?
Great. Enjoying my tea. It still feels like an early morning for some reason. I don't know why. But
it's 2 o'clock for us here. I guess the life of a startup is, always
it's
busy.
Hectic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm so jealous of Communitech here. I saw Anton walk up to the hole in the wall and he said, Earl Grey, hot. And then his tea just sort of materialized out of the wall, and
they're living
really
the Star Trek lifestyle here.
It is Earl Grey, isn't it?
It's crazy. Well, let's talk a little bit of tech news here, and since Anton is from a hardware-based startup, we've kind of chosen a few pieces of startup news that are kind of focused around hardware, and hopefully we can get some interesting insight from you, Anton, and see what you think here. The first thing I was going to bring up is this new kind of gesture controller called Touch Plus. They had I don't know if it was Kickstarter or Indiegogo. They crowdsourced their initial funding, but the basic idea is it's a device that kind of attaches to the top of your computer or beside your computer that turns any surface into a gesture controller. So it just uses 2 cameras, and you can move your hand along the surface of your table to use it as a mouse pad, or depending on how you decide to manipulate your fingers to execute certain commands and so forth. People seem to think that this could be one of the next big things in gesture control. We've kind of had the mouse for a long time. I think at least 20 or 30 years now. People have been using mice as their main kind of input along with the keyboard. I think the only real revolution that happened in mouse control was switching from the trackball to the laser, right?
Right. And maybe wireless now.
That's right. So now we have these other kind of gesture controllers that are appearing on the market. So I don't know, Anton, what do you think? Like, is this something that you think will go somewhere, or is it just a fun little toy?
That's the new trend. You see it everywhere. If you'll see it, it's not the first device. There's at least three different variations of gesture control, starting with Wii, like what they started, right? That's was the first generation of something, a movement other than the joystick, right?
Yep.
And then you have the Mayo armband, which just went crazy. Thelma claps. All it is different ways of input into your technology, right? Whether it is your smartphone, your PC, or there is also another one that was I saw not long time ago on CBC News. Maybe it was a guy somewhere. I'm not gonna lie, somewhere in Toronto.
Yeah.
But basically, it was like a little pad that you basically control 3D for, let's say, your 3D CAD. So you can actually use it instead of there's also a mouse for professionals that you can use. It's like a big ball that you kind of move around.
Right.
Oh, interesting.
So he replaces that with a gesture control as well.
Sure.
So there's so many. It's a new trend of trying to get what else is out there, right? How can I control it, and finding that perfect spot, whatever makes it into the field.
So it's a pretty crowded market, or a pretty red ocean right now, eh?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Well, and I think a lot of these different controls, these different types of gesture controls, lend themselves to kind of different consumers or different applications, right? So the other big one
specific,
is
yes.
well, and there's the Microsoft Kinect, which is also a gesture control, right? But that's very much kind of aimed at the gaming market right now. You were talking about some, I think the second thing you mentioned, which might be more for CAD operators and people in 3D design. But what do we think? Do you think we're going to see some major disruption as far as at the average consumer? Like, can you see your mama, your dad, or your non-tech savvy cousin buying something that's not a mouse as a new type of way to interface with their computer? I don't.
Sure. As I read the article and then watched the video, the first thing that struck me was that because it is such a competitive market, Anton, like you said, and there's so many people out there, we're going to have some agreements about, okay, if you left click or if you swipe left, that's always going to be this. And then if, because I can see there's going to be a steep learning curve as I was watching the video of them using the device, the Touch Plus. They looked very good. It was almost like watching a guitarist play a guitar.
Right.
So I know I could probably learn to play guitar, but I can see that you have to really invest some really good time to be able to be proficient with it.
Sure.
So that's what I saw, is that I'm not going to be able to run on it and then be able to be proficient with it at the beginning. It looked very complicated. Right. Although he did put his hand out like a rock, paper, scissors. He was the rock, and then he exploded it in a big 5, and that shut the computer down. Or maybe it was the reverse. He put his hand out spread and then made a rock. And the computer went.
I would be afraid, though, of accidentally, like, you're in the middle of doing some work, I don't know, try to
strike up a game of rock, paper, scissors.
Or you make a hand motion, saying something to your kid or to your wife or something, and next thing you know, you've shut down your computer.
Yeah. Your file has been deleted.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I think the most intuitive interface will win. Eventually, you're going to have a lot of whatever is more simple, and it's just going to tie down to one or two products eventually. So.
Sure, and
I think that'll be key.
And I think we saw it with something like the iPad when it came out. It was such an intuitive interface. You want to do something, you reach out and touch it. And when my son was a year and a half or 2 years old, he was operating the iPad like a professional, because literally a 2-year-old child can use an interface like this. So maybe that's what it is. I mean, when you create something that a 2-year-old can use intuitively.
Well, then again, if you take a BlackBerry employee and give him an iPad, to him it's not intuitive. It depends on what you have been using before,
true.
right?
It depends on your context.
Are you saying BlackBerry employees are less intelligent than 2-year-olds?
No, I'm just saying whatever.
Intuitively.
Maybe not.
And Caleb's maybe not a good example, because the guy's got a level 69 Warhawk, a warlock on World of Warcraft, so he's a bit of a prodigy.
My son knows a lot about technology. Yeah, I guess he's 4 now, so you can imagine what he's doing now. But anyway,
he's coding the new Minecraft.
Well, and I think too, just when we're talking about new kind of interfaces here, I had a friend who taught. He had a job at a college teaching senior citizens how to use Windows, essentially, right? This is like 10 years ago, and it's surprising, like the things that you kind of take for granted, like when someone would tell you move your mouse to the middle of the screen. We kind of know what that means, but they would have people in the seniors class that would physically pick up the mouse and put it on top of the screen.
Sure.
Because it's not intuitive when you're not familiar with how the technology works, right?
Right.
Yes.
And if I don't know, I would be interested in seeing something like this, gesture-based things. I think, once people start incorporating this kind of technology directly into the hardware, where I don't have to buy a separate standalone device, but it's almost like your computer, your laptop comes with a Wii built into it, and it's sensing your movements and doing this and that. I think that's when we'll see some mainstream kind of adoption of a lot of these new kind of gesture-based controls. But
and we talk about that a lot, how, we talked about the smart shoes, how if it was incorporated into a shoe, maybe that would affect my buying decision. But I'm not going to run out and buy it by itself. And that's kind of the same here. I'm going to sit on the sidelines. I'm not going to buy it specifically to have it. But if it was included, I might try it.
Sure.
So, again, that sort of falls in this category for me.
Sure, absolutely. Well, let's move on here, guys. Next thing we want to talk about a little bit, something that I thought was a bit gimmicky when I first heard about it, but it's called KettleCharge. And so this is a device, a piece of hardware that essentially, when you're boiling water to make your tea.
More tea talk.
That's right. When you're making your tea, you can convert some of the heat that you are generating in boiling that water into electricity and use it to charge up your mobile device or whatever it is. So they're kind of marketing it for people on camping trips. You're making a pot of coffee or making some hot water for tea while you're out in the wilderness camping, and now I can plug in my my iPhone and charge it up while I'm making my hot drink out in the wilderness.
So you can check your bear app to see if there are any bears around in the vicinity.
I suppose, yeah.
Let me just get some internet connection.
Right.
Yeah, maybe, sure. But yeah, I guess what it comes down to is turning heat into electricity through this, small gadget. I don't know. Can you see yourself using a device like this? Are you ever stuck somewhere where you think, if only I had a way to turn heat into electricity, I could finally get out of this, deal with this problem.
Oh, geez, if I had $1 for every time I had myself in that.
Personally, I'm not a camper at all, so I can't even imagine just going somewhere that far. But
right.
There's always a target market for a specific problem, right? So whatever, you have to speak to that person that goes camping out a lot. I mean, maybe he sits, even though he's somewhere in the forest, he wants to play his favorite game on his iPhone. And for all,
Right.
I don't know, or maybe use it as a flashlight. That's a convenient thing to do.
That's true. That's true.
So I can give you a little bit of a personal experience here. I wouldn't use it in my kitchen because I've got enough gadgets to boil water for me that it's not going to have any real estate on my crowded kitchen space.
And you probably have a plug nearby.
We have
your
enough.
Own home, right?
We have several plugs within sort of every 6 feet. We have a plug for something.
Perfect.
But I did go camping into Algonquin Park with the family. So a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old that had never been in a canoe before, and a wife who had never been in a canoe before.
Wow.
And a moron who had been in a canoe 25 years ago. So we tromped off into the woods through a portage. This isn't just a campsite. We were off in deep woods. So we had to find a campsite. And we each brought our cell phone. And we didn't think that we'd have a reception or a connection to the internet, but we brought it for everything else. It was our camera, and it was our flashlight, and it was our clock. And it was, so we used a lot of the tools on it, right?
Sure.
As opposed to bringing a flashlight and bringing a camera and bringing all the separate pieces. So I have invested in a Mophie case, which recharges my iPhone. It was $100 and it recharges it at 100%. So I had double the charge.
Yeah.
So with the two cell phones we brought, these were iPhone 3GSs.
Right.
We only powered them on when we were going to take pictures and use the light. And we used one phone until it died, then the next phone and it died. So it lasted us 4 days.
Okay.
But we could have taken more pictures if we had the ability to recharge it.
Sure.
And, boiling water out there, that's all I did on this camping trip was cut wood to make the fire, to boil the water so we could drink and eat.
Right.
And it was a cycle. Go cut more wood, keep the fire going, boil more water. Cut more wood, So I was very busy. So I could have used just a little boiler off to the side for just a couple of cups of tea would have been great.
And keep your phone charged potentially.
So I could see, I'm not a huge camping trip gear guy, but I could see that there is a need for recharging. Now, I don't know if my cell phone case would be okay.
Sure.
I don't really know that I need the boil water device to be the charger. But I can see that there might be a market for it.
Sure. But when you're telling that story, like I'm thinking, first of all, if I bring a phone on a camping trip, like what if I fall out of the canoe and the phone gets fried in the lake or something, right? I would guess you put it in a Ziploc bag or something.
Yeah, so everything, you have your matches, which are probably more valuable to you than your phone for those 4 days.
Sure.
So, you have the waterproof floatable bag that everything goes in.
Sure.
Yeah. So as a camper, that you're not as worried about the water destruction of your phone.
No. But I'm also thinking, like, I might prefer to have a separate flashlight and the clock and what else are you using for a camera as separate devices, just so that like my clock, I can have like brand new batteries in it. I know those batteries are going to last me for 6 months or whatever. It's not going to die, and then I won't know what time it is. Or once again for the flashlight, like if I'm heaven forbid I have to go out and take care of some bathroom business in the middle of the night in the wilderness, I don't know if I want to be tromping my iPhone through the forest and taking it out to accompany me on a trip like that.
Sure, then you can pop up your Songify app and play some Disturbed when the bear comes to get you. You got to get up to get down with the sickness. That'll scare them away.
Sure. You need to have a soundtrack for your own death, I think, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think there's a concern when you're portaging that I know you would probably want to bring your hairdryer and your curling iron too. But if you have all those things, you have to carry all that, right? So the iPhone is nice and light.
That's true.
So I don't know. It's
one
interesting.
way or the other, there's probably a market, I guess.
I think there might be.
Like this, right?
I think there might be.
But if it's not the camping market, I don't know what it is. I can't think of another situation where you would have like I really need to boil water, but I have no and charge
in
my
my
phone,
kitchen,
and I have no electrical outlet nearby. So I guess for campers, that's about it.
Well, the batteries is another thing that's becoming extra, right? You charge your phone for a battery. That becomes very popular as well. That's another competition to that. So instead of bringing my boiler potter kind of thing, I have a 3,000 milliamp separate battery that charges all my devices, whether it's now flashlights. You can actually charge flashlights now through USB, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
You can charge anything through USB nowadays, so might as well have that.
And I saw a cooler that they were making on an Indiegogo or Kickstarter campaign, and it was the Cool Cooler or something, and it had all the radios and USBs and all kinds of chargers, solar panels.
Yeah.
It had a blender that you put on the top, and it blended drinks for you. It had ice and it was all kinds of stuff.
If only I had money.
Wow.
It was a little more time.
Well, and you could there's always solar as well, right? If you need electricity in the wilderness, I'm guessing there's usually an abundance of sun. You can hook up a few solar panels and stuff too. But yeah. But anyway.
But the irony is you need light when there's no sun, so technically you can't charge your flashlight with the sun. It
Right.
just becomes ironic as well.
You can't. But do they still have those flashlights where you just shake it? Do you remember those ones?
They're sold in Canadian Tire last time I checked.
Oh, were they? Yeah, I had one of those. I used it for like a year and a half until I guess the coil stopped operating. It was a cheap one, I'll admit. It was like $2.
Right.
So maybe they're not meant to last
It wasn't
forever,
a Tesla coil?
Yeah, no, not quite. But there are many options. If you're out in the wilderness, I think hopefully there are many ways to get electricity for those who need it at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. If I'm going out to pee and I have to shake my flashlight, the bears might just laugh at me. What is he doing?
Better a bear laughing at you than a bear eating you. That's what I always say.
True.
All right, guys. Well, let's look at this last article we have here today. This is a technology I had heard about before, and I guess it's getting better. We were just talking about using solar power and stuff. So this is spray-painted solar cells. Apparently there has been a step up in the ability to produce energy using spray-on solar cells. This particular technology was developed at the University of Sheffield. It uses, I'm not going to pronounce this word right, perovskite, a calcium titanium oxide mineral that is inexpensive, just like organic solar cells, but absorbs light nearly as well as silicon. I'm quoting from my article as I say.
That's good stuff, too.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So the idea here is pretty much, any material that you feel comfortable spraying this stuff on can become a material used for generation of electricity through solar power. And they say right now that they're able to achieve 11% efficiency versus the 19% that you can typically get with perovskite. I sure hope I'm saying that right. But anyway, so they're still kind of improving the technology and working on it in the lab before it can be released for commercial use. But the idea is that once it is ready to be commercially deployed, that you could take, say, any vehicle in the world, spray a coating of this on top of it, and use your car as a solar battery. If you drive an electric car, then hopefully then it'll actually extend your driving range and so on as well. But you could spray the sides of entire buildings. You could spray your hat, which I guess would face the sun for a good portion of the day if you're walking outdoors. Maybe charge up your iPhone with your headgear.
Nice.
Interesting.
Nice.
I like that one.
Yeah, sure. I don't know.
And that'll be 20% for Darren if anybody gets the spray hat iPhone charger app.
This is our typical deal for all of you listeners. Yeah, if you steal one of our ideas, we need a 20% equity chunk. That's just how it goes. Anyway, so spray on solar power. What do you guys see this becoming a thing? What do you think?
I think it's awesome.
Yeah?
I think the first place I would implement it is police cars, actually.
Okay.
Because they have the biggest necessity for solar power, right? They have like insane amount of batteries that they keep plugging in.
Yeah.
As you can see now, they'll have actually a retractable solar panel that goes above the lights.
Do they have it already?
Yes, they do.
Oh.
All police cars actually have that.
Yeah, because they have the laptops and all the gadgets and widgets.
The amount of power they need is crazy. So, I mean, the regular solar panels, they have 15% efficiency. And
Right.
it's only, I don't know, a meter by about 20 centimeters big. If you can
Such a rigid
spray,
space.
Yeah.
Right? So if you can spray the whole hood of the car and the roof of a car in this and you get 11% efficiency, you're technically putting out much more energy than you would from this ridiculously heavy thing that goes on top, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that would be great to implement it there. I mean, you just go to the government, go implement this technology, and it's right now being sprayed on cars. And go ahead, you're
Yeah.
just making sales, so right there on the spot.
And that could be like the same way that you kind of get the rust proofing or something at the car dealership. You get the solar spray as an additional option.
Yeah, like an
right?
aftermarket thing. I really like to think about our friends over at Structured 3D Printing and Andrew, what his group of makers would do with it, and sort
That's
of put it in
true,
the hands
right?
of the tinkerers. And although the 3D printing industry is sort of small scale stuff,
Right.
I just think those are some of the creative, inventive people that would come up with some neat applications like the police car or, outside of cars and buildings,
Yeah.
what can we do? Robots to power themselves or,
I was thinking too of we talked on one of our earlier podcasts about there was all that hype about that guy who had invented the solar roadways.
Sure.
Remember this? Those
Yep.
kind of hexagon
Those
shaped
huge,
things.
thick,
That's right.
expensive.
Yeah. So instead of that, depending on how durable this material is, once you spray it on something, but just take a machine, spray your roads, and then I guess you have to have some sort of device to collect the power, along the side of the road. But much more cost effective, I would think, than installing completely new technology on an entire road surface. When it comes to collecting solar energy, and
we think,
there
and
you
we
go.
certainly don't know. Like the road and the solar power is not maybe a good match. Although it kind of at first you think it is, but then you cover it with these rubber tires, and you'd have to clean it, right? So your 11% after a year might go down to 6 or 5, or you don't know. And the snow and the rain and the dirt and the So I don't know if the
Fair
road
enough.
is the
Fair
right
enough.
spot. And that's where we got
Yeah.
to, I think, when we did that last podcast.
That's
Was
true.
like, is this the right place?
And I guess if you're spraying it on cars, generally you try to keep your cars, not covered in snow as you're driving them around
Right.
and so on. So
Yeah, but then you park them in the garage. So then do you want to, but cars would, it was interesting to learn about how much percentage of the road was covered by a car
Right.
in its life. And
Right.
it's like not much at all. It's like
Yeah.
98% of the time it's wide open.
Right.
And you're like, but the traffic around here is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
But no, it's yeah.
It's true. I think the future of solar, my personal prediction for the future of solar is
Dun, dun, dun.
just go into countries like, I spent 5 years living in Qatar in the Middle East. A country like Qatar is like 95% completely barren, desolate, hot, sunny nothingness.
Yes.
So just cover those countries with solar panels.
Start painting
essentially.
them.
No one's using them for anything. Keep a few areas for feeding your camels, and a few areas for flying their falcons. They like to fly falcons in the desert, and then cover the rest with solar panels. And I guess it just makes the Middle East another kind of energy monopoly. It already kind of has that with the fossil fuels. But
please tweet Darren directly if you're offended by covering the entire country with solar panels.
I'm just saying, you're not doing anything with it anyway. You might as well generate some more power.
We'll leave some space for your camels and your falcons. But other than that, folks, you're out of luck.
Yeah. You can still hang out under the solar panels. There's lots of shade.
Yeah, it won't rain on you at all.
Yeah.
Well, in reference to the previous flywheel technology you mentioned, it's exactly being paired with, there's actually newer flywheel technology nowadays. You can have, the breakthrough is the carbon fiber core that you get. And this carbon fiber core, because if you look at the kind of energy formula, it's like half mv squared. So technically speed will give you more energy than just weight. So basically they're trying to pair that with solar energy now in countries like Qatar and UAE and even Singapore as well.
Right. And, it's been a couple of days since I've looked at that formula.
Yeah.
So I wasn't...
So I actually worked on it.
Did you?
Yeah, I worked on this exact project.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's the future.
Flywheel?
The flywheel energy and the solar. They're trying to pair that together now to get to install, let's say, on a roof of a house, you put in solar panels, and instead of replacing batteries, you put in a flywheel storage system.
Wow.
So so combining those two, you have something that's mechanical and works forever. And now, right? So
you have the gathering and the storage,
Exactly.
so then you're able to use it whenever you want.
Exactly. So it outputs the energy right during that peak hours in the evening. So it stores it during the day. But flywheel energy is still at earlier stage. It's being actually tested in Formula One cars. It's being used right now.
What, in the engine?
It's used in as a booster. So when you brake, you use brake regeneration. You put it on flywheel energy, so it's much faster. It can absorb more energy quickly and release it quickly. So it kind of becomes like a turbocharger. So you stop, you regenerate the braking energy, and then you release it right after. So they actually have it right now in the most updated kind of hybrid technology. So.
And have they demonstrated that it can increase the efficiency and faster
it's
speeds?
being used in the top-end Formula One cars right now. Even Jaguar is planning to implement it in their E-Type.
Wow.
So basically there's a lot of problems with it, like side G-forces and whatnot, but you can gather a lot of energy in it. So
I feel like my IQ just went up 2 points by sitting next to Anton here.
This is why I love all of our guests. Typically are smarter than we are.
That's not hard.
Yeah, we're able to reap the benefits of their knowledge.
Thank you for those nuggets.
Well, let's talk to Anton a little bit more here now about what you're doing here, Anton, with MBlok. Now, I first heard about you when I was toying around with a project, which I ultimately did nothing with, but for looking at data storage in rings, something in a smaller form factor like that. And as I was exploring that idea, it was here at Communitech. It was Sam from Communitech, who was our guest on our last episode, 2 episodes back. Grabbed me as I was walking past and said, Darren, come here. You got to meet this guy. And introduced me to Anton and heard a little bit about what you were working on. And at that point, I kind of decided, I'm not going to work on that ring project anymore because these guys have already, taken so many leaps forward in their own research and seem to be on track. So maybe, Anton, you can tell us a little bit about what MBlok is. And then maybe we can find out a little bit more about your own background and how you got involved. But what is MBlok? Let's say that first.
What is MBlok? In a short, brief description, it is wireless pocket storage. And for all your devices. That's the key thing we're trying to.
and we're talking data storage, not battery storage.
No, data storage, file storage. Yes, file storage system.
Yep.
So it's accessible on all your devices. There's so many devices these days that everyone has, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you got a tablet, a phone, a laptop, a PC, and then your friend's PC, and then that has software specifically for your device, for his device. Mm-hmm. You got wires, you got micro USB, you got lightning ports. It just becomes so problematic. And now you pair all that with file storage that used to be on flash drives, which is simple.
Right.
Now you pair that with wireless synchronization, wireless transfer, mail, and it's becoming really problematic, even more so for bigger files as well, because now we just have no other option but wireless internet transfer of files between devices. That's all we use now.
Sure.
Because there's simply too many standards that have to be compatible with it, right? So it just becomes a pain. So, for example, if I want to transfer files, how do I do it? That's the question.
Sure. Well, and I know I've dealt with the situation where, I'm trying to think of what the actual file was. I think it was a PDF file that I had on my iPad that I wanted to get onto my home PC, which is it was not an Apple computer, a Windows 8 machine. And I was like, how, apart from emailing, I think emailing the file was pretty much the only option that I had at that point. But there was something with the size, and I just remember thinking to myself, like, it shouldn't be this difficult to move things. And I think part of that is Apple devices
Well,
don't always play nicely that way.
There's a method to the madness there.
Right.
Yes, there's a reason for that.
Sure, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a way that I can at least take care of transferring between devices, and then I guess also extending the storage capabilities of my mobile devices, right?
Yes. Well, the problem nowadays, again, with the paired solution that you have, transferring files to your devices, what the result of that is, you have different files on every one of your devices.
Right.
If it's bigger, versus, for example, you'll see Google Drive being used for sharing, right? But you'll see that mostly people do not go past that free limit of 2 gigs.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. So
Sure.
basically, you'll have content, that videos and everything. You'll still store it physically. Try to store it on your phone, or it's something bigger than that. If you're looking at, I don't know, 3D files, and then you start going, something like that would not be accessible through wireless unless you're in a home network again. But
Sure.
then, what's the point of a mobile device, right?
Right.
Right.
So that's the idea of synchronization. So what we do is, we create this device that stores one copy of all of your files in one location.
Right.
So your phone no longer becomes a storage device. It becomes like an extra screen.
Right.
So I can view it from my phone, or I can view it from my tablet, or I can view it from my PC. So it becomes this offline. So if I'm working on something day-to-day basis, it's most likely not going to be more than 64 gigs.
Right.
Right? That's so much storage you need to back up all your data.
Sure.
So it becomes this offline kind of backup device that's on your keys.
Right.
That is accessible all the time. So if you need to network with someone, let's say in another city or another office, online becomes excellent, right? I love it very much, and I use it on a day-to-day basis.
Sure.
Sending an email, you're cooperating, you're networking, you're sharing files.
Right.
But something that you're working on day-to-day basis, why should I have to use the internet for something that I'm using locally, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So that's the idea. So it provides much faster access because the device is right here in your pocket. So the speed is never limited by reception. So you have instantaneous access on all of your devices.
And what would the speed be to access through the MBlok device, say to my Android phone, compared to if I was trying to connect to my Dropbox account through my data provider or through Wi-Fi?
That's a really good question. So
Yeah.
ideally, a theoretical never matches actual.
Yeah, fair
Technically, it can reach 600 megabits, whatnot. But technically, we're able to reach about 25, 30 megabytes per second because it's direct Wi-Fi, right? So you're actually reaching just wireless connection between your MBlok and your phone or your tablet, and it's just right there, instantaneous.
Right.
So if you have the proper synchronization in terms of perfecting the software to do so, you can get it up to 25 megabytes per second.
Wow.
Versus internet LTE, I would say average Cisco, if you look at North America, which is actually has #1 speeds all over the world, average speeds,
Yeah.
it's around 350 kilobytes per second.
Okay. Interesting.
So as you can see, the speed
Different ballpark, eh?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
completely. So for emails, I mean, you don't need it.
Yeah.
But if you're starting to reach something more, Google Drive starts, for example, compressing the files. And businesses absolutely have no other way than using VPN, and that becomes even more problematic.
Sure. So especially if I'm doing like high quality, high definition video files or something like that, where the files can be
supposed
10
to
or
be
15
all the time
gigs.
with you. Yeah, so you
Right.
don't worry about it. They're just there.
So
Sure.
then is Google Drive and Dropbox, they aren't your competition
No.
then, you would say?
No,
Because
they're
they're
not.
not doing what you're doing.
No, exactly. I still use Google Drive myself. I
Right.
love it very much. It's just for something specific to get files between your devices. Why do I need to use the internet for that?
Right.
It has to be
Right.
something
So
quick.
that's your value proposition, is that you
Exactly.
don't have to be online.
Yes.
Right.
And it's all devices.
Exactly. So just to manage between this, I consider it as my own device. It has to be like a little cloud fog network of your own.
Sure.
Employees can use it. For example, if you're working offline, for example, it becomes in corporate networks, it seems intuitive that you have internet on your phone.
Yeah.
However, in company networks, they lock the Wi-Fi access to employees.
Yeah.
And that's very common.
Yeah.
So
Right.
how do you use a device?
Yeah.
Even as an employee, so technically it's for personal use, but not really.
Yeah.
And working on projects becomes very hard. So
Yeah,
you're
interesting.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I do remember in my previous workplace actually wanting to access my Dropbox files for a project I was working on there, that I was doing some work at home and working at work, and they had blocked Dropbox access through the company network. So you're right. So a device like this, if I could have that shared file in my pocket rather than in the cloud.
Exactly.
Was it you guys? I thought I had heard some company that talked about carrying the cloud in your pocket. Maybe that was you guys.
That was
Yeah?
us. So
Okay.
basically, before it was we're concentrating on consumers, but
Okay.
right now we can actually make less features, less fancy features, and can concentrate on enterprises, and they actually need it more than consumers now. Consumers, it's a convenience.
Right.
For enterprises, it becomes a necessity.
Yeah, so that's your
Right.
target
Yeah,
market now.
exactly.
You've flipped.
Yeah.
Was that a pivot that you guys
Yes,
did?
exactly.
Okay, interesting.
So we found there is still a huge demand for the product of MBlok in the consumer market, but we'll offer it as a side note. So you'll still be able to buy it as a consumer.
Sure.
However, we can go to businesses and we can say, for example, oil projects, they're working on remote projects, having something accessible that would back up your files from VPN as well, or from, they say cloud, but actually cloud is a very interesting term, which is irrelevant completely.
Well, it sounds
yeah.
nice.
Yeah, that's exactly.
It's better than saying like wireless data storage in a remote facility or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, the thing is, the cloud is just servers somewhere else. That's just a
Right.
lot of people get confused because they relate this Google Drive to
Yeah.
actual enterprises, which are completely irrelevant. But
Yeah.
that's just another point.
Fair enough. So now you guys did a crowdfunding campaign a while back. How did that go? Did you reach your goals?
It went, well, from my point of view, it went great considering we're at a much earlier stage compared to everyone else.
Sure.
So, for example, our product is, compared to some other ones you'll see, it's very advanced. So our components are very small.
Right.
The form factor is small. We're trying to really push the limits of what technology is able to do,
Sure.
is capable of. So our development costs are insane. So to make something like that, you know how they say, oh, just make a prototype and then we'll
Sure.
see how it goes, right? For us to make something like this and before it's manufactured is very difficult. So we
Sure.
want to make sure that there's demand for the product before I start going off and spending my $30,000 to sit this
Right,
on the garage for next year, right?
Yeah, look what I made.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Who cares?
Exactly.
Okay.
So all our we see a lot of startups and they're able to make this something quick on I don't know, like an Arduino or something.
Yeah.
But we can't do that. So
Sure.
so we decided to do this market kind of analysis, check if it's there, do the perfect marketing campaign, so
Yeah.
it doesn't bring us back, so we know for sure if it's a product or not.
Right.
Right. So we got a lot of volunteers together. We got a group of about 9 people, and we worked on this presentation. We filmed. We did this whole thing. And
This
it
is
worked
your crowdfunding campaign you're talking about?
Yeah.
Exactly. So we made a lot of we made the perfect campaign, and considering, for example, compared to Structure 3D,
Yeah.
they were working on for a year for example, they were at Hyperdrive, right? So
Yeah.
they already had something to work with, and then they got into Hyperdrive.
Right.
Right.
We couldn't make that prototype, so before going to after making. They made the prototype, went on Kickstarter. We made the Kickstarter and then made the prototype.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, so the idea was, so what Kickstarter promises is if it doesn't work, you can give the money back, right?
Yep.
So for us, it was just get
Some market validation.
a market validation. Because
Sure.
if we do just pre-orders by itself,
Yeah.
if you're not spending money on it, not putting money out of your pocket, how do I know if you're really going to buy it, right?
Okay. Sure.
And Kickstarter creates this ideas where I can really check if a person is interested in the product.
Sure.
If he's willing to put that money and it actually goes to my pocket, then I know for sure I can tell that to others that I got $126,000
Right.
worth of orders.
Right.
Right.
That's it.
Did you get
Let's go make it.
$126,000?
We hit $126,000.
Oh wow!
Yes, we
that's
did.
amazing.
The thing is, after that, it fell due to numerous things. But there was big concern that we didn't have a prototype. So people were just worried because there's so many projects that just failed, right? Due
Sure.
to negligence and not understanding the concept that they think you can make it for Kickstarter money. You can make this whole thing work.
Right.
Which is the biggest false hope. I don't want anyone.
100 grand's not going to make you.
100 grand is not going to make you. Even
no.
$2 million is not going to make you. You know, it's just something you have to. You're building a team. You're building this whole corporation around this, surrounding this product.
Sure.
And people actually on crowdfunding websites, they don't understand that.
Yes.
Right.
So you gotta explaining that to them. That became really difficult, and so people are just not willing to risk that money, saying, "Oh, you're gonna steal this money." And in the end, we still got what we wanted. We got $126,000 of people saying they are gonna buy this product based on our proposal.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's so now we got this proposal. We're building the product. We're spending already a lot of time, a lot of development costs.
Yeah.
And I'm risking my money without a problem.
Right.
So I know exactly. So I got a lot of approval. We got even potential companies that are going for test pilots. That'll be test piloting our prototype when it comes out.
Wow.
And we're already planning to fit into the form factor that we promised by the end of September.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
we have the best engineers for it. So
Sure.
for example, we have Ilya, that's he worked at BlackBerry, Motorola, and another startup company that is actually very successful. That is making a new chip for 4G.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, and it's actually much more battery efficient, so power efficient.
And he's on your team?
Yes, and he's on our team, so he's our co-founder.
Okay, excellent.
Like the Haswell processors.
Yeah. So we got, for example, the other person would be Marius.
Okay.
Thankfully, there's this group of people at Community Tech from BlackBerry. It's the workers, the employees that after BlackBerry kind of had a tough going.
Yeah.
They have problems with finding jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And we found this gentleman, which was amazing. He worked actually for International Space Station. He worked for the military defense.
Wow.
And now he's our hardware designer.
Oh, cool.
So
That's amazing.
So thanks to X11, they're really, really awesome. I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly what their company called, but a team from BlackBerry. They actually have their own consulting firm now as well.
Wow.
But they're helping us, and we're able to just be on that limit of what the technology is really what you're capable of.
Sure.
So what do you spend most of your time doing? Because you're obviously a really smart dude. Are you coding at all? Are you being an engineer?
I'm a mechanical engineer, so I don't code.
You out talking to people? Do you have a soldering iron in your hand sometimes? Give me a breakdown of your week. Or are you always meeting? Are you the front man, or what's the?
So I'm the founder. I created the idea, and obviously when I started, I didn't know anything about this boards, chips, or anything. To me, it was everyone's telling, "Oh, you can't do it," and it's like, if I can learn a textbook before an exam 2 days prior, I can learn learn about electric circuits. So for about 4-month period, I sat there day in and day out and learning about PCB boards development process. I looked
a printed circuit board.
Sorry. Yes, and then I looked at, for example, disassembled phones and what components they had and what processes go into why is, for example, one board is so large, one is so small. What are the costs associated with that?
Wow.
And I created this whole thing, and then that's how I motivated others to join me, and then we created this project.
Wow.
And I feel there's no limits on what you can learn. It's just what you like, right?
Sure.
Right.
So engineering taught me how to learn, and now I learned what I like. And basically, I'm working with this technology. It's very ironic because I hate technology in some ways. No joke. You know how I came up with it? I can't stand the fact that there's such a huge learning curve to this technology evolution.
Yeah, a lot of it. Yeah.
Sure.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Why? I'm a mechanical engineer. There's a reason I'm not a programmer, right?
Yeah, sure.
I can't stand it. It really annoys me. So that's why I created something like this, because I wanted to be intuitive.
That's
Sure.
cool.
I wanted something that to work, just to be there and compatible with everything.
Yeah.
So this device has an USB. Thankfully, something that uses USB, just like a flash drive, but it's also accessible on your devices.
Sure.
So it's just something that works, that's there, and always, no matter what.
Yeah.
That's the idea for it.
Now, maybe I can ask you, Anton, just to step back a little bit. Like, how did you end up in this space, in this school? I hear a slight accent, so I'm guessing that you grew up somewhere else.
This is like deep south. It's like Alabama or something.
Texas.
That's right.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
just a little bit about your journey to find yourself here now.
Well, thankfully, I want to thank Velocity and Communitech, the most amazing place ever. I never knew this existed at all. I thought it's like, oh, you got your own business, you're screwed. Go sit in the basement for 2 years. Thankfully, that's not the way that works. So as I started getting more, we rounded closer to the Kickstarter project.
No, but even before that,
University of Waterloo student?
You came to University of Waterloo?
Yes. Co-op made me realize I hate work.
Okay.
I really can't. Not that for example, I was always getting good reviews, and next time I can do the work very well. But I just found it boring. I found it boring no matter what project. I was always on the front end projects. I found it boring because I was always doing engineering.
Sure. But
I like doing a bit of everything.
But and what made you want to get into mechanical engineering in the first place? Did you have an idea like I'm going to be this when I'm done? Or
yes, I always dreamed of becoming an engineer for BMW. I always wanted to apply for Germany. I'm like, cars.
I've got to tell you, man, my brother-in-law is an engineer for BMW.
Really?
He's an electrical engineer.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he actually just left BMW to go work in the Middle East. He's going to Saudi Arabia to do another project out there. But he spent 2 or 3 years doing electrical systems in BMW vehicles.
Really?
So
they have employee pricing?
Well, I was going to say, if you're looking for a sweet hookup and are willing to move over to Munich, then if MBlok doesn't work out, there's a lot of ifs there, but I might be able to hook you up. But anyway, okay. So that was your original thought,
Yeah, that's the original thought. So I went into and I actually still love tinkering with stuff. So I used to have a car since day one of my license, and even before my license.
Yeah.
And generally, I love tinkering with stuff. So mechanics, cars, for me, that's still my passion.
So you're a gearhead.
Yeah, I am a gearhead. So I love cars, but...
Well, and it sounds like you're the kind of person who can open something up, take it apart, see how it works, and kind of learn as you go. Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess there's only so many things you can break around the house that they'll forgive you, right?
That's true.
But it's cool that, when you're talking about your learning process for doing MBlok, it sounds like that's exactly what it was, right? You sat down for 4 months and opened up phones and opened up, all kinds of devices and figured out how this all works.
Yes.
I think that's an amazing skill. I like to think that I have a piece of that, but I don't think it's at the same level, and I wish I had more of that, actually.
I got a quick funny story. I tried to repair my own car window. It's electric, and it went down on my Hyundai Sonata.
Right.
So I went online and found some information. There's no textbook, really. I didn't have the manual to repair it.
There's FYIs.
Yeah, there was a whole bunch of stuff. So I actually watched a video of guys doing it and learned about how they work and dug into my own car. And I got so far that I needed the part. So I started to figure out where to get the part stuff, and it took several weeks, and I eventually just brought it in to Hyundai to fix and said, because I had taped it up and I had taken the guts out, and so I knew I wasn't going to be taken advantage of at the dealership because I knew exactly what had broken and how long it took me to get it apart and everything.
Sure.
But I figured we'll let them just put the new part in and close it up and everything, finish this job off.
Right.
So I can't remember what it cost me, but afterwards, as I'm paying, he leans over to me and he says, sir, sometimes it's better if you just let us start and finish the repair than you starting it. It really doesn't save us any time.
But then you don't learn anything in the process.
Thanks. Yeah,
right?
that was the point I gave.
I'll tell you, here's my little story, which is even more on the side of ineptitude.
Right. I got halfway, I guess.
I had to replace the battery in my car, which is a relatively simple process. Yeah. And I went to Canadian Tire and I bought a battery, and my old battery had become so corroded, like the terminals were so corroded that they were kind of beyond salvageability. I had to replace the terminals as well as the battery. And so I'm in the Canadian Tire parking lot, kind of doing surgery on my car, trying to get this working. And,
classic. This is January?
It was cold. It was cold. And it got to the point where I was just getting the new terminals kind of attached, and the positive terminal, for some reason, I had a really hard time getting it onto the pole of the positive terminal in the battery, and I ended up taking a wrench and just kind of whacking it till I could get it on. But it wasn't completely on. It wasn't a very firm connection, and so it didn't happen very often, but maybe every 30 or 40 times I went to start my car, and it's a push button start. I would push the button and just kind of get a bzzz. And that's it.
Time to bang on me again.
Then I would open the trunk. I would open the hood. I would like whack the battery with my fist, and then the car would kind of go and power back on, and then close it. And as I'm driving, I'm like, I hope I don't go over too big a bump or something and have like the battery pop off again. Now I have since resolved the issue. I've got somebody who knows more about installing batteries the proper way to take care of it. But this is once again where I think, I wish I had, some more of that quality where I could do things well on my own by tinkering. But
there's got to be a meme created with a picture of a guy hammering in the parking lot of a Canadian Tire, just hammering on his engine
with a wrench.
With a wrench,
but that's the thing. I don't even have the right tool. Yeah. I'm using a wrench.
You're using a shoebox or something.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like every second person on the parking lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Whether it's a tire windshield,
absolutely.
I've actually seen in some Canadian Tire parking lots they have signs up that say, "Please do not perform car repairs."
Oh, really?
In parking lots. Like really, so many people have actually been doing it.
Oh, I've done it. Absolutely.
It's crazy. Okay, so cool. You did a lot of tinkering. That you have some amazing people working with you now. Yes. So where are things at now with MBlok? You have this prototype. You're hoping to be ready in the proper form factor by September, which is coming up soon. Yeah. Have you guys started pitching to potential customers? Or
yes. So we're doing all three things simultaneously.
Okay.
Pitching to customers. Well, actually, we're not so much pitching as getting more feedback.
Okay.
So feedback is more important than a pitch at this point because you just want to know what's the problem the customer is facing.
Sure.
And then you kind of tailor the product as it comes out. So basically, we're trying to talk to as many companies as possible.
Okay.
And at the same time, I'm trying to raise funding. And at the same time, we're working on the prototype. So it's all things are hectic, and you're running kind of in all different directions.
Sure.
So your crowd source funding fell through. Have you had any other funding?
Did it fall through or no?
I didn't. In the end, it fell right barely below the goal.
So, okay.
So
fair enough.
Thing is, I wouldn't have used that money anyways.
Right, like you were saying, it was more market validation for you, and you didn't want to sell those to the consumer
because
anyway.
It was too much risk as well, and I'm actually happy it didn't work out the final mark because I got what I wanted and then didn't get the money for a reason is I have no obligation to the consumers.
Sure.
So right now I would have an obligation to make this exact product for a specific time, and it will be just crazy.
And that maybe is not the right focus for you, like you said. Now you're going enterprise and not consumer, so that validated your market. So any other money come in? Did you get any?
We actually weren't looking for any at the moment. We did apply for. We just got our team. The Kickstarter campaign just finished June 16th.
Right.
Okay.
So it was literally a month ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we got our. We also had a little bit problems with finding the perfect guy for the development. So finally, you found the perfect developer. So we're just still. Technically, we're still just the beginning, and then we're gonna get in September. We're gonna apply for various funding. So there's government grants, there's everything. So we're gonna need that money in the future.
Right.
Have you guys thought about like Hyperdrive or some of the other accelerators?
Yes.
I guess you're in Velocity right now, but there are other kind of local resources, right? Yeah.
We're applying for. I'm the kind of person that wants to go to America.
Okay, sure.
And for the reason, not because I like America, no offense, but it's just that right now, in terms of investment, they provide more investment.
Sure.
So the headquarters, I would like to be in Kitchener, and I'm going to have the office here because I love this environment. It provides me the connection, and I want to be near University of Waterloo, and it's an amazing place to be.
Sure.
But for initial investment, you need to get out. If you want to be on the market, if you want Canada to find out, you have to let the Americans first take care of it.
Sure.
Once America finds out your product and they implement it, then it comes to Canada.
Sure.
So we kind of want to just right now enter the American market. And then
that's a totally different type of money because they're less risk averse than the Canadian investor is.
Yes.
So you're able to get more for your vision than you would be able to get here.
Even ideas that seem silly, like and end up raising $1 million, right?
Bam.
So are you looking at something like Y Combinator maybe, or
Y Combinator is more software oriented.
Okay.
So we're looking, since we are an enterprise startup, we're looking at there's another accelerator. It's in Washington, for example. It's only enterprise oriented. So you'll be working with mentors like Cisco. You're working with Microsoft. You're working more. So you're even working with the government. What's it called?
FBI? No?
No. Hopefully not there.
KGB?
No.
Well, you're working with actual like governors and whatnot, so they actually see
okay.
if you can implement in the government system as well. Because if you're working enterprise,
Yeah.
government is technically just another enterprise. Right?
Sure. When you
So
say
they're-
Washington, do you mean Washington, D.C. or Washington
D.C.
State? Oh, okay.
Washington, D.C.
Interesting.
And also New York. So those something
Wow.
we're looking forward to. Maybe even London, because, for
Okay.
example, Techstars have... Techstars is one of the big accelerators, and they're
Yep.
located in up in United Kingdom.
Okay.
But we're not excluding the Toronto ones. We love them. We still apply to them. We're just getting a look at all our options. I would much rather stay here instead of go somewhere.
Sure.
If I'm offered kind of the same deal, because what they have now is they understand the same principles. You go to America for investment. So what you have is 3 months you're working in Canada on your product, and they develop with you and they give you mentorship, and then they actually take you to New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And
okay.
then
Now let's
yeah,
parade you
that's-
around a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So that's all you do. So technically it's the same outcome, but
Sure.
it's kind of, we are looking more into other areas of accelerators that we can go to as well, other
Awesome.
than Ontario. Yeah.
Okay.
Keeping your
Sounds
broad,
good.
all your options open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, listen, we're just about out of time, but let me ask before we wrap things up, if our listeners kind of want to follow how things are progressing with MBlok and with you guys, can we find you guys on Twitter or Facebook, or do you have a website? Where can we
We
kinda see
have
what's happening?
everything, a bit of
Okay.
everything.
So where can we find
So,
you online?
We'll take
Twitter?
one of each.
Yes, exactly. So we don't post too many updates at this point because we're so early. We want to get our first prototype out, and then we'll show some results. But
Sure.
it's at the MBlok. So it's on Facebook and Twitter.
Okay.
And mblok.ca without a C. MBlok, MBLOK.
Ah,
No
yes.
C, just everyone gets confused.
Okay.
mblok.ca or the MBlok is for Twitter and Facebook. You can find us there. We have groups everywhere.
It's almost spelled like MBlok.
MBlok.
Like the English, like a
If
bloke,
there was an
like
E
a
on the
buddy.
end of it, yeah.
Yeah, there's
Sure.
no E, I guess. Is that
Sure.
right? Yeah.
It actually
But-
came out with like memory block. So
Memory
MBlok,
block. Yeah, memory
MBlok,
block.
MBlok.
Yeah.
Memory block. That's
Makes
neat.
sense.
And
Okay.
any shout outs to your mom, or you said some of the guys on your team that anybody else you want to say hello to?
I don't know. Sure. Well, I want to just thank everyone. I guess I want to thank you guys the most. I think it's awesome to get to talk about this, and I actually found out about the new stuff as well. Finding the right people to talk about this is actually very fun.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool.
it's
Yeah,
cool.
we
And
enjoyed
I really enjoyed it. I
And
think
we
that was
love
awesome.
we love talking to people and hearing about all the latest stuff. And like we said, it's nice having people who are smarter than us, give us a bit of insight and education too, so we can learn. So that's awesome. Well, let's wrap things up here, guys. We're just about at the 1 hour mark. We want to thank you, the listeners, once again for joining us on another episode of TSP Weekly, the Tech Startup Podcast. Special thanks once again to Communitech for letting us record here today. We want to remind you, our listeners, please feel free to send us your comments, your questions, your criticisms, and your feedback. You can reach us via email at feedback@tspweekly.com, or you can just find us on the web at tspweekly.com and drop a comment into the comment section for this podcast. Appearing next week on TSP Weekly is Mark. And, I'm not going to be able to pronounce his last name, even if I tried. We'll have to get him when he comes in to tell us how to say it. But Mark from the Rockstar Cafe, an interesting little startup local to us out here. So we can look forward to that. So for myself, Darren Conley, from my co-host, Stephen Campbell, and from our guest, Anton Kabanov, thank you very much for joining us here. And we'll see you all next week.